Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to my channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about the 2022 film Sick. Let's get into it. Sick is a 2022 film written by Kevin Williamson and Caitlin Crabb, starring Gideon Adlin, Beth Million, and is directed by John Hyams. While quarantining at her family's lake house during the pandemic, Parker and her best friend are threatened by an unexpected visitor. Guys, I often say you don't have to have a completely new concept when you're making a movie, whether you're writing it or directing it or whatever you're doing. The idea does not have to be completely unique. The template can be a familiar one. I mean, movies have been being made for over 100 years. It's almost impossible to find a completely unique or untold story. Almost every template or formula has been used in some capacity. But I personally like to use the analogy of a restaurant. Yeah, there's a ton of restaurants that serve steak. So if you're going to go into that industry, you have to do something to set yourself apart. You have to add your own flavor or spice so that your food stands on its own amongst the pack. Well, in this case, Sick is a home invasion slasher at its core. We've seen it a bunch, and at its bare bones, that's all this movie really is. So, as a filmmaker or writer, you have to ask yourself, what can you do to set your movie apart from the last one? So, like I said, it stands on its own amongst the pack. A good example of this was Mike Flanagan's Hush from 2016. I'm using it as an example specifically because when you strip both of these movies down to their bones, their premises are very similar. Same essential template, but in that movie, our main protagonist, the girl we're rooting for, is a mute and deaf girl. Boom! That single plot element changes everything. The further along we get as a society and the better technology gets, let's face it, the harder it gets to create serious and believable dread, because you can just pick up the phone and call the police. Everybody literally has help in the palm of their hands. So, as soon as you throw that monkey wrench into the equation of her being deaf, it removes that safety blanket. This girl is suddenly at a very believable, realistic, and very scary disadvantage. So as the viewer, you're truly in a state of tension with this girl. Given, of course, that the rest of the movie was executed properly, that's also very important to this, but in the case of Sick, Kevin Williamson threw in the fear and paranoia of the pandemic, specifically the early days of the pandemic. This hits especially close to home since that wasn't very long ago, and I'm sure we all remember what it was like going to the grocery store or trying to reach out to family or friends or just being in public in general. The world was a different place overnight, and people's defenses were up because everybody was in a state of panic. And also everybody was in quarantine. So this movie exploits all of that fear and capitalizes on it for the sake of the plot, and it's very effective here. The plot of this movie is pretty streamlined, but one thing I really appreciated and liked was that along the way, it weaves in little story beats that act as breadcrumbs, and you don't even realize it at first. A statement will get made, or it will harken back to an event that fits comfortably into the forefront of the plot. Like in the moment you think it's just a random statement of an event that happens, but then as the story unravels, you start to figure out why all of this has happened, and you find out all these little moments were actually significant to the third act revelation of the film, and everything comes together nicely. I love it when movies can successfully pull this off and it doesn't feel forced. It's the trait of a good writer and filmmaker, and Kevin Williamson has always been good at this, so I'm really not surprised. But another thing I liked is our characters. I'm perfectly fine if a horror movie wants to just make everybody cannon fodder, but it really helps you to invest in what's going on when you do have likable and relatable characters. It makes you care more about their fate, whether they live or die. And that's what separates a generic slasher from a good movie. That's what actually made Scream a cut above the rest, was the phenomenal casting and the characters. I actually hadn't even heard about this movie until recently, and from my understanding, it was a sleeper hit that has just slowly gained traction, which surprises me since Kevin Williamson was so heavily involved in this film. But Guys, for a rating, I'm going to give this movie a solid 9. If you're a slasher fan or even just a horror fan, I highly recommend you go check this one out on Peacock. This would have been a great theater experience, but it was also a very good living room experience, and I'm very happy I seen it. And if you're a slasher or a horror fan looking for a good time, I highly recommend you see it too. But anyways, have you guys seen Sick? What did you think of it? Let me know down in the comments section or find me on one of my socials, which are in the video descriptions of all my videos. In the meantime, go ahead and like and share this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe and I'll catch you guys in the next one.